Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no-fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
All right. Well, thank you for coming and attending our webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a great session for everyone this morning and this afternoon. But before we get started, I just have a couple announcements. Everyone is on mute, but I believe everyone's found the chat feature. So that's awesome. We encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions along the way as they come up. So you don't really have to wait till the end to ask your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our panelist and we'll get on with our webinar. Jerry, take it away.
Oh, great. Thanks, Kevin. We've got a really large group of attendees on this webinar today. So I want to encourage all of you to join in on the conversation in the chat. I'm going to add any questions or Q&A as we go along. I know this is a hot topic for people right now, so feel free to engage and I will try to moderate the questions as best I can. To give you a little bit of background about me, my name is Sherry Budziak. I am the CEO of .org Source. And I call myself a technology enthusiast. I have spent my entire career focusing on how the latest technology can help improve the lives and experiences of those that we serve in our communities and create opportunities for operational improvements. At .org Source, we consult with associations in three main domains, including strategy, marketing, and of course, technology. So our panel today, I'm excited about our panel. Unfortunately, for those of you registered and wanted to hear from Laura Lewis, she is unable to be with us today, but Jason Wampler has stepped up at the last minute this morning, and I look forward to hearing what he's up to at the International Society of Automation. We are also, I believe, still waiting on Brian Willard, who will join us at some point. He got pulled into an executive meeting, and we know how that goes working in association management. So we said, join us when you can. So with no further ado, introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself, your organization, if you're using AI tools or what your plans are in the future for product offerings or improving operations.
Thanks, Sherry. Yeah, my name's Jason Wampler. I'm the Director of IT here at the International Society of Automation. We're located in Raleigh, North Carolina, but we are an international organization. We have 15,000 members, 50% US, but then the rest are in India, Southeast Asia, and then we've got a spattering as far as over in Europe and as well as in South America. I've been with the organization for 2 years, but prior to that, 15 years of association experience and almost 10 years of nonprofit 501c3 before that. As far as where we are with AI right now, the internal use, I would say we're just getting our toes wet as far as using agents within, much like with Zoom or Teams to help summarize stuff. But we do have a product offering that we're looking to launch here in the next, I'd say 90 days, maybe 120 days, that will be actually digesting one of our top product offerings, which is our standards. We're a standards-based organization. One of our top standards is the IEC 62443, which is regarding around cybersecurity, which is a hot topic right now. And with that, we're looking at leveraging through the partnership with BettyBot.ai. And it's actually going to be consuming our large library of DRM protected documents for a product offering for our members. So I can talk more about that, once we get further along.
Great. Luke.
Hey, good morning and good afternoon to you lucky folks who are over on the East Coast and are already halfway done with your day. My name is Luke Vidacovich. I am the Director of IT and Digital Strategy for AAHA, which is the American Animal Hospital Association. We are a standards-based organization that provides accreditation and certification for vets, vet techs, and animal hospitals. So if you have a pet and you go to a vet that is not American Animal Hospital Association accredited, I advise that you go to our website, look at our vet lookup tool, and try to find one close to you that is. Been with the org for just over 2 years. This is actually my first jaunt into the nonprofit and association space, but this was a cause that I cared passionately about and really wanted to jump in and help pets and vets, as I like to say. We're actually pretty far ahead of the curve when it comes to AI. I've got multiple tools that we are in production with right now that are running for us. First and foremost, us for over a year and a half, we've been using rasa.io to help with one of our newsletters. We'll talk more about that as we move on, but started very small. We used it just to go find scholarly articles and well-written sources so that we could put together the newsletter a little more efficiently and have more articles and sources to pull from. But over time, we've actually modified it and adapted it to where the entire newsletter is written through AI, and it's customized based on our members' clicks and likes and dislikes. So if we see that they click on articles, we get that info back. If they click on an article about cat digestive health, the next time that we serve up a Newstat newsletter to them, it's going to have more articles about that based on their feedback that they've given us. So we're using that to great effect to save a lot of time and help our people focus on, what's really important. Furthermore, we're using a contract software called Lexion that has AI built into it. Basically, it tries to scan all of the documents that we upload into it and pull out as much information as it can for us to be able to search through. So I can search through this and I can say things like, show me all my contracts that are expiring in the next 6 months, and it'll pull everything. And it's working really well for us. We also got Dialpad, which is our VoIP system here. It uses AI to help us basically to route calls. So when somebody is talking to either an automated answering system or to one of our people, can kind of ping them on their screens and say, hey, this person is discussing this. Do you want to send them to this person or this department? We also have analytics turned on so that we get like an overview of how the entire call went, whether it was positive or negative, or what they were discussing the entire time, so that we can have pop-ups for the screens for the people who are handling the calls to say, hey, it looks like this isn't going well, or this person seems upset. Here are some cards or things that might be able to help you. We're also right in the middle of working with an outside organization to do a holistic approach to AI for our organization. So rather than letting everybody kind of go off and use tools like Copilot or ChatGPT and do what they want, we're really assessing the needs of the organization based on each department and allowing this firm to help us understand which tools can help us with AI and how we set up a holistic standards and processes and nice guardrails for everyone so that we get the benefit of all of the AI stuff, but with as little risk as possible, which we all know is tough in this world.
Ryan, just in time.
Yes, I apologize for being late. I'll explain that in a
Okay.
minute. So I assume we're doing introductions. So
Yeah, introductions and either how you guys are using AI or what are your future plans for, using AI for product offerings or operations.
perfect segue for why I was late. My name is Brian Willard. I am with the CCIM Institute. We do credentialing and education for anyone who does anything with commercial real estate. As for what we are doing in AI, we are really just starting to dip our toe into it. I've used ChatGPT to help with a few things, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I actually just came out of a executive call that we were making recommendations because AI was not part of our working plan, is not part of our strategic plan at the moment, but making recommendations that we do a exploratory committee. We call it a PAG, a Presidential Advisory Group, that will start looking at ways that we can use AI to benefit our membership. That got approved, so that just happened seconds ago. So we're going to be creating a group that will be evaluating potential member benefits and ways we can use AI to benefit our members. That'll be interesting to report on at a later time on how it's actually going. So I'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. On that note, we should do a follow-up to this webinar in a few months and just kind of check in with you guys and see how things are going. Kind of before we dig into some of the things that you're doing, what are your thoughts on some of the fundamental elements that need to be in place? I mean, when you look, and you guys I've known most of you guys most of my career, but as we've embarked on what was the new and greatest technology that everybody was jumping in on, I remember we've had some same conversations when it was the web and online communities and social media. And I think that what's different now is the pace, right, of this technology. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what are your thoughts on what are some of the fundamental things that need to be in place in an organization before you're even kind of embarking on what this new, technology can help and bring you? I don't know, Jason, do you have some thoughts on that?
I got a handful of them. My first one, and we typically do this as an approach, is know the why. Straight up of here's this brand new widget or tool or buzz whiz bang thing. Tell me what's it going to do, or tell me how can it help improve, whether it's the business as far as a bottom line, or is it a feature rich, type of offering that may be web enabled, mobile enabled, whatever for the member? And are they getting something back for it? The other thing that you start getting into is if it's going to need to look at some of your systems, then it becomes a paramount or very important point to know where your data is or know where your content is. Because if you don't have that structured, or at least have your lanes of what, this particular type of technology is going to consume, then, that's a whole different thing. We've got articles that date all the way back to 1960. Do we want it consuming those? Are they still relevant today? Those are fantastic questions to ask. And then for us, particularly with some of the stuff that we're getting ready to offer, are there any other like legal protections or ramifications that we need to be aware of? Great example there is most of our members are either engineers or technicians in automation fields. So think oil and gas, automotive, bio, everything. And if they end up taking that standard, and if they just, read it today like they should, okay, that's fantastic. But if you end up using like a large language model and it comes back and it does a form of a summarization and maybe it hallucinates a little bit, that's a different problem really quick. That's just some of the things we look at.
Yeah, that's great, Jason. Luke, kind of to follow up on that, I guess, I heard some of the tools that you guys are using. I think the contract management one is great because I don't know how many times I've gone into an organization and they'll say, I want a new whatever, FMS, AMS, whatever. And I'm like, well, when's the contract up? We don't know. We can't find the contract, right? So I guess to follow up on Jason, because I know you have some probably same thoughts, but what problems are you guys trying to solve for? Were you trying to solve for?
Yeah, for us, it was especially on the contract management one. To be completely honest, I wasn't even looking for AI. I was just looking out there for some sort of contract management system. We had, full disclosure, 4 or 5 contracts last year that auto-renewed because we weren't doing a good job of tracking when we needed to cancel them, and they auto-renewed without us wanting to go forward with them. So I have multiple pieces of software or apps that I'm paying for this year that I'm not using just because our finance team and myself didn't do a good enough job of monitoring those. And so I started looking into contract options and started looking through them and found Lexion and found the one with the AI tools. And for us, it was a really easy sell. It came through as basically the same price as some of the other options for us, but gave us the additional impact of it'll go through all of our contracts and try to pull as much as it can. And that saves us time, even if it gets it wrong. It may have, the wrong people listed there. It may have a wrong phone number. It may have a wrong cancellation date, but at least it gives it a shot and, keeps us from having to enter that information. So for us, it's always, is the juice worth the squeeze? And for this particular one, the amount of work that it did for us definitely made it worth, the additional time and effort and cost that it was going to take to onboard in this system. Because there are it did take longer to onboard us. It wasn't just load up all of your contracts and go. It was find all your contracts, load them, let the machine learning look at them all, then QA them after the fact. And that took an additional couple of months for us. So, it was mostly, is the juice worth the squeeze? And then getting buy-in from our executives to say, are we okay with this? Do we feel comfortable with this level of AI?
Brian, I'll go to you for the same question.
In the vein of both what Luke and Jason said, what I just presented to them is we need to look at things that both provide ROI, which everyone knows what it is. And in the case of what Luke just talked about, that's where you look at, is there return on investment for those things? But when we're looking at things that may help our membership, I specifically said we need to look at what ROM we will also get, which I look at as return on mission. What are things AI can do for our membership that actually benefits the mission of the organization? Because those are the intangibles that provide member benefits that keep our members hooked into our organizations and provide us with next year they want to renew because we've added this additional functionality or feature, or have provided, whether it's an online artificial intelligence LLM that answers their question 24/7, 365. One of the things I'm realizing is I have to stay away from the word chatbot because chatbots have been around for a long time and have a negative connotation. What's happening out with ChatGPT, even though it really is a chatbot, it is a different animal. So you need to sell it as a different animal and not use the old terminology. So I think those are the couple of things that I am looking to make sure that are in place, as well as prioritization, as I talked about. With the group that we're putting together, a lot of it is not only just identifying, but prioritization, because you could get going into this and this and this and this and this very quickly. and you will get lost in all of the work that suddenly just gets thrown at you and your team. So you need to make sure you're prioritizing and knowing that you're not going to solve everything day one.
One of the things that we've just been talking about too, and you guys are technologists and are getting kind of the, how do we do this and how do we implement and kind of focus on the software or whatever side of things, the technology side of things. But one of the things too, and I would kind of love any of you to jump in kind of with your feedback, but with any of these initiatives, technology initiatives, I think that there also needs to be somebody really focused on driving the change, right? Change management. And you are all really good at that. And then upskilling, because like we're working with a lot of organizations that are not focused on implementing any AI tools, for better, for worse, but they're not giving the staff enough time to even be able to upskill. And unfortunately, Laura wasn't on the call, but I did a presentation with David Martin, their CEO at Society of Critical Care Medicine. And he's got a culture of kind of what I call kind of exploration. Go explore, learn, take time to do that during your day and come back and, let us talk about how we might be able to use some of these tools to help with operations. Any of you guys want to jump in and have any thoughts on that?
I can jump in really quick, Sherry. Our end of year meeting that we had before we went to the holidays and kind of shut down for a little bit, we kind of, did our celebratory stuff and whatnot, but then we turn right around and kind of put I would say a mantra or a charge for the beginning of the year. And that was come back in January, end of the month, take some time, go research some of these AI tools. Because as far as IT is concerned, we can say, okay, we can try to, fix operationally, maybe, it's through membership or maybe it's through finance or phone systems or what have you, but we may not necessarily know every tool that's out there, because by the time you're turning around from one day to the next, there's 5 more, 10 more, 12 more LLM tools or some other type of AI tool that's out there. But we've made it an actual charge for this month for our folks to come back with a tool that could benefit either them as far as their day-to-days, or back to Brian's ROM, which I'm totally stealing, buddy, as far as with the members. But we're also incentivizing. We're going to take those, requests that come back, through our ticketing system, as far as like, this is the challenge. We're going to evaluate which ones that, hey, this looks like it might make the best hit, or the juice versus the squeeze, Luke. And actually, if we end up implementing it, we're also going to turn right around and, incentivize, the staff member that did that. Our culture is definitely a learn by doing. We're not afraid of failing. Just pick up and let's, get to the next possible answer as soon as possible.
That's great.
I'm going to hop in for a second. One of the things that we're doing right now is in preparation for this, because things that I was doing originally was, running things through Chat GPT to improve the way things were worded. For instance, our automated call system, when someone calls into the auto attendant, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, press 3 for this. We were getting some confusion, and that was getting up to executive staff, to our CEO. And so we had tried a few things, and internal staff was writing it. So I ran it through ChatGPT and said, improve this. It made a couple of little things that weren't quite right. So you need to make sure you go back and validate that. But it actually did improve it. We put that in. But one of the things that was very important to me was to identify that this ran through ChatGPT. I did not say that I had made these changes. I said, this is something that ChatGPT, is there anyone that has any updates or wants to make any changes to it? And I identified the changes that I had made. We are actually right now drafting an AI policy. So before we do what Jason is doing and kind of throwing it out and saying, what are things that we can do? We're actually going to start developing a policy, run that through HR, get that added to our handbook. And then the next step is to look at what things we can do. So I'm going to throw that out, is to make sure you've established some guardrails on what can go into AI, what can't go into AI, so that you're protecting your intellectual property and private information.
I should preface that then, or follow up back up, Brian, to say, yes, we had the policy first before we just said, hey, go find stuff.
What do you think that maybe isn't working for you when it comes to the discussion around AI?
For us, and full transparency and kind of a word of warning, for us, I think it's moving forward without a policy. Have a lot of people doing a lot of really interesting things with AI, but without communication of what different departments and different silos are doing, it's really hard to keep track of it. I kind of had to have, go behind the scenes and try to herd people after they've already been working with it and try to do a policy after the fact. And we never wanted to be a group that's like, no AI until we get everything figured out or tell you what you can and cannot do. We want people to experiment and want to be able to work with it. But we move forward with a lot of things without having a whole governance AI policy or knowing what a lot of groups were doing. The good news in that is there's not a lot of overhead. Those groups get to move a lot faster. And so we're pretty far ahead with a lot of AI tools compared to a lot of other organizations. But at the same time, I don't have a lot of insight or oversight into what they're doing and how they're using it. And there's a chance that we may come up with a policy that affects that because it's what's best for our org. And so we may have to roll backwards on that. So I strongly caution, it's worked out okay for us, but I'd strongly caution letting everyone go forward with any of these tools without a broader policy and guardrails, or at least knowledge of what they're doing. And especially as we're seeing things like Copilot being just built into Windows 11 from the start, somebody's going to wake up one morning, see that their computer is updated, ooh, what's this? And start playing with it. That's when you can start running into problems.
So we had a couple questions. So one was around, I saw an earlier one around dashboards and another one about dashboards and financial information, if there's any tools or if you guys are using any tools.
For dashboards, not yet. We are actually starting the implementation of Acumen at the moment, and they have started to add AI into their dashboarding tools. So we are looking forward to, once we get that in place this year, being able to start not only becoming a more data-driven decision organization, but using some of those AIs to do predictions. One of the things I have cautioned my team about is this is all new. We need to also know that to a certain extent, it's going based on previous information, and outside things may affect what its prediction is versus accurate what's going to happen. Kind of like asking AI to predict what's going to happen in the stock market next year. It will make a guess, but whether it's accurate or not may be better or worse than what the pundits are out there are actually predicting.
I think you're looking for the fine print of past performance is not indicative of future results.
And to add on what Brian said, sort of an aside to Association Analytics, Nucleus is another dashboarding company that is using AI in some of their things. And then for any of you who are on a Microsoft Dynamics based AMS, almost all of them are working on utilizing ChatGPT in their systems in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of them are doing it from the reporting side to be able to say, hey, here are these metrics, tell me who's at risk of non-renewal right now based on, these metrics that I've taught you, and it'll start to give you that information. So a couple other routes to go.
How do you guys envision the role of AI within the associations over the next few years? And I guess, are there other steps that you guys are doing to kind of help with this change?
So a few things that I see coming up, and that was part of the memo that I put together that went to the executive committee, is I tried to identify things that might be helpful in the next few years. Some things, obviously the ChatGPT, being able to ask it questions and get answers not only on basic things, but potentially some behind the member wall, like educational material and other things that you may split that particular service, the whatever we end up naming it, but the chatbot type that's more of an artificial intelligence solution. You may have basic question and answers on the website. If they log in and they have a certain membership type, it may actually go out and connect to additional databases to provide them information. We're looking at educational. We personally, one of the problems we have is that past members may continue to use our credentials. So we're going to be looking in to see if we can find ways that AI can go out and look for people who no longer are eligible to use that credential who may be using it incorrectly, and then notify and potentially notify them. Other things that I was looking at for governance, one of the things that first popped up AI to a lot of the executive committee and the board was a lot of people had turned on the automatic note takers and summarizations. That's something that we want to look at, but we want to do it under a controlled environment. Our concern was that a board meeting would go on, someone would turn on the automatic note takers, and then they go into executive session. And at the end of the executive session, it send out notes, including all of that private information. So one of the things I'm also looking into is, because at our governance meetings, we do live meetings, is there a way we can record that and run it through an AI and have it do meeting summarizations? Because we need to turn around those meeting notes very, very quickly at our governance meetings. So that's one of the things I'm suggesting that we look at. Things like this one, actually, when I found it, was a little scary. I identified a company that does no-ring voicemail drops, but they use AI, so we could have our president do a recording based on a script, and then all we have to do is put in text, and it will then replicate their voice to that script and drop that in voicemail. So it sounds like they did it, even though they weren't the ones who did the recording. Potentially AI generated newsletters that are personalized to the organization, marketing campaigns that are AI generated. Those are things that I see that we can look at over the next 5 years or so.
For us, to expound a little bit on that, it's kind of all about efficiency. It's letting AI do the things that anybody can do to let our staff do the things that they're really good at and the things that they're passionate about, especially for us. I know that everybody works lean and everybody works agile here, and everybody wants more employees. And so for us, we actually have a really, really low employee to member ratio, almost 100 to 1. And so we really have to do a lot of work for each of our employees, considering the number of members that we have. And so if I can have a system that goes out there and does the busy work of finding the scholarly articles, putting them all together, making a rough draft in a newsletter, and my writer only has to sit there and proofread it and make sure it looks good and send it out, that frees them up to do more important things, the creative things, instead of just the busy work. And if I have a system that can go in and parse all of my documents and say, here's your reminders for when you need to cancel this, here's the value of all of these contracts, and pulls out all those fields for me, that's a task that literally anyone can do once they're trained in the contract system. So let AI do that for me. And now I don't have to have anybody worry about contracts. And this gives us full transparency in our org. Outside of a few select things, our contract system is open to anyone. If you want to know what we're paying for internet, any of my employees, anyone that works here can go look that up and see exactly what's going on. And so now I don't even have to have anybody that does that job. There was somebody that took care of that before all this started. And now that person is freed up to do the work that they're better at, that takes, the creativity that AI is lacking right now, in my opinion.
Everything they said.
Everything they said.
And the only other thing I can think of, at least with how we're structured, is it's going to end up being to the point of where AI, depending on whatever the platform or the tool is, if we kind of, like, I'll say, consolidate that down, that almost becomes like an internal SME on staff. So, you could have, like, let's say, we call them job aids for, some of our folks that, they may not necessarily know everything about the automation in oil and gas. But when it comes time to have to answer those questions with regards to, this particular training course that we're offering, or this, this next conference, they may not necessarily have to go and contact, that one other manager or that other engineer that's, on staff that doesn't get up for another 12 hours because they're halfway across the world. Instead, we can turn right around and ask our internal SME and say, hey, I've got this customer on the line and they're wanting to know, is this going to be involved in the next training? We'll know within seconds. So we're looking at that kind of an angle with regards to, just in addition to that knowledge base in-house.
So we have a couple of questions. And the first one, I don't know that if you guys can answer. I will try to, and then I will turn it over to you guys if you've heard anything similar. So the question is, heard from a colleague that our accrediting body is going to, or did send a notice hardline, educational content that will offer CME cannot be generated by AI. Anyone else hear of this? I'm hearing from other executives that there is a lot of conversation around concerns over AI generated content. And there are a lot of associations and accrediting bodies are taking a very conservative hard line. It's interesting because the execs that are what I would kind of say are on the forefront of technology or more innovative and forward thinking are not taking that hard line, but they're kind of sitting back telling me what's going on in all of these kind of CEO discussions. So I don't have a specific answer for you regarding CME, but there is that discussion, which has been interesting that I've been listening in on. So anyone else, Jason?
Standards world right now is saying, don't even think about it as far as like bringing it to the table. You do have some pushback to say, well, why can't it help at least generate the first draft?
And you guys may have some opinions about what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm on TikTok. I was trying to search for some stuff regarding AI just to hear what people are talking about. And it's interesting in kind of all of the universities, what the professors are doing is they're taking papers that are submitted and they're running them through to see if they've been AI generated. What is happening is some of the students are running their papers through Grammarly or tools like that. They're not really producing them via an AI tool, but the AI checker is saying that they are. And so there's all this controversy in that kind of the education space. It's interesting because I have another friend who's going to school to become a teacher, and they're encouraging them to help the students, in using AI. So I think, we're all new to this, and I think there's a lot of fleshing out of a lot of things. So another question is about BettyBot. BettyBot looks amazing, but I loathe sites that don't have pricing. Does anyone have any knowledge on that?
I honestly do, because that was one of the chatbots that I was looking at, and I was very impressed with the organization. However, they have a very interesting pricing model. I won't go into full details because a lot of times organizations don't want their pricing, but I will let you know they look at your budget and number of members and a few other metrics to figure out what price they will be charging you. So they actually went out to our 990 on the internet and just ran it through. So I didn't even have to send them anything. But yes, they look at membership counts and how big your budget is and revenue to determine how much you will be charged.
Yeah, Mike's saying that it's expensive.
It is, but again, one of the things that what you're buying with that is their experience and the fact that it's already gone through and been trained in a lot of association-like terms. Then you're just adding your content to it. So the training process will be much faster. That's one of the advantages. And it comes down to speed. How quickly do you want to roll something out, and how much time do you have staff and for your member leaders to do the training into those types of GPT type of engines?
Jason, did you have a follow-up? I see you're shaking your head.
Yeah, and I'll kind of piggyback on Brian, because we actually ended up with Betty. And the reason why we ended up with Betty is I went all the way to, let's create this thing custom from in-house. We'll do SaaS. We'll do, and I say SaaS as an SAS, not SaaS. We went straight to the data people themselves, said, if we were going to build this from scratch, what would it look like? You're a minimum at a capital outlay at 6 figures. So then it becomes more of a, okay, do you want something that's off the shelf? Maybe you get a little bit of a customization type of hook. Maybe you get to talk with your own data, as well as like with what Brian said, you're also looking at whether or not have they done it before? Are they reputable? If they check those boxes and that becomes the more important thing, then obviously you can lean that way. But if you want more full control right at the very beginning, then you might be in the custom bucket.
So you guys, this has been a great discussion. We could probably sit and talk all day. So since we have like 2 or 3 minutes left, why don't we do just a quick final thoughts on this topic? Luke, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo the thoughts that I had at Solutions Day. So if any of you were here for that and this, I apologize for doubling up. But I'm fortunately or unfortunately not really old enough to understand and be there for the advent of the internet as it came to enhancing business operations. But I think as we look back on it, I know that a lot of people at the time thought this is going to put people out of a job. This is going to be the worst thing. But what it really did was allow people to focus what they're really good on. And I think, without being, too much of a doomsayer, that I think that AI will be that next thing. And I think that the organizations that fail to adopt it will be left by the wayside. And I think that kind of goes double for us as associations and nonprofits. We're all working very lean. We're all working with limited staff. And so the more that we can do to help them and get them to do what they do best, the better off that we'll be. And again, I gave my thoughts on, don't move forward too quickly without guidelines. I definitely would start there, work on policies, work on making sure everyone's on the same page and that there's good communication. But I think it's something that you can dive into. And my last thought on that is just pick something that you know and just start to scratch the surface. Something that you know, when you see how AI works with it, you're going to have a much better understanding of what it can do for you in that particular capacity. Starting with something that you don't know, like for me, which would be like standards, that's not a great place for me to start with AI because I don't know what it's supposed to look like. But contract management, I know exactly how that's supposed to work. And I know that we were going to get what we wanted out of it. So start researching, start small with something you know, and take it forward so that you can make your organization more efficient and really benefit your members and your employees.
Jason.
I would say be prepared for it not to work. You're going to try some stuff, or you're going to end up finding a product that you think will solve X and really it doesn't, but it might actually solve Y. So give yourself some grace when you're doing this kind of stuff. And then much like Luke said, make sure you start small. Find one little thing that you're either, like Luke said, really good at, or you're looking for that low-hanging fruit for a win. And I think once you get that kind of an adoption in-house, then tackling some of these bigger, corporate-wide initiatives become a much easier sell.
Brian.
For me, it's looking at both internal processes like Luke has been doing and also what you're going to be able to enhance for your members as you go through this. I have taken a much more member-driven. We've actually had a few members that have pushed us, so I've been looking at that area a lot more. There are internal things I'm looking at, but again, we're looking at getting that policy in place before we start really pushing in for our members. The next few years are going to be very interesting. I was old enough to be around when the internet came in. So yes, there was all the fears of this is going to replace this. Outside organizations are going to take over. I don't think we're going to see that. What we're going to see is a change in work. We're going to see enhanced and improved ways to interact with the association and improved and enhanced ways for our staff to get their work done. This is going exceedingly fast, but I think we're just at the very beginning, and I think it's going to take 5 to 10 years for this really to shake out. So take the long road, know that you don't have to do everything day one, know that the players are going to change, how this is going to look. I mean, as you mentioned, Microsoft just rolled out Copilot. Everybody now that wants to get into it, before it had to be a 300 or more organization to get into the higher level, the paid for products. The other thing is start educating yourself. I'm going to throw my favorite blog into the chat. It really concentrates on AI and automation of processes. So if you want to look at that, number of YouTube channels are out there. Sherry, I'm not on TikTok, though my wife is, so I've not gone out and searched that. There are some LinkedIn groups. There's ones particularly on artificial intelligence exchange. They do AI conversation and collaborations. That's definitely worth looking into. So just staying up on it. If your board hasn't gotten to it yet, they probably will start pushing for it. So be prepared, be ready to start talking about what you can do for your members as well as what you can do for staff.
I will kind of wrap this up by saying, I think it's a really important time for upskilling and spending the time to understand the technology, not just for how we're using it for our internal operations and helping with enhancing the member experience. But I know that our team is getting calls to do strategic planning and having discussions with different industries on how it's going to affect their industry or their profession. So I think the more that we know and the more that we can be familiar with what's happening in the world as things are changing, the more that we can also help whichever industry that we're serving as well as they kind of navigate, because they're navigating the same thing, right? So anyway, we appreciate you guys joining us. I know, everybody's busy. Brian, you were able to jump in with the meeting, and Jason able to jump in this morning at the last minute to join us. So I really appreciate it. And everybody that is attended, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, I'm going to be adding more resources and tools. Listed AI is another one that I've been following on LinkedIn. There are a lot of good resources as well. So again, I hope you guys all enjoyed the webinar, and we look forward to talking with you soon, and hopefully some of you can join us in March.
Thank you, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. .org Source specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.